The darkness came first, then pain. Darth Vader opened his eyes, and the world was wrong. The air was warm. The sky above him was open. No recycled oxygen, no mechanical hum of a life support suit. Just Coruscant, alive, bright, and decades too early. He lay still for a moment, processing, his armored hands pressed against cold stone. Every system in his suit read normal, but nothing about this was normal. He rose slowly, and that's when he saw him, across the landing platform, moving fast, laughing at something Obi-Wan had just said, was Anakin Skywalker, young, reckless, full of fire. Vader stopped breathing. He had not seen that face in over 20 years. Not like this. Not before the fall. The young Jedi hadn't noticed him yet. Why would he? Vader stood far back, cloaked in shadow, his massive frame hidden behind a supply column. But his eyes never left the boy. That boy is me. The thought hit him harder than any lightsaber blow. He watched Anakin joke, argue, and push back against his master, all that stubborn, burning energy still completely intact, untouched by Palpatine, untouched by the dark side. Not yet, Vader thought grimly, but soon. He knew exactly what was coming. He had lived it. Every manipulation, every whispered lie, every step toward the edge. And now, somehow, he was here before it all began. But before Vader could take a single step forward, Anakin Skywalker turned and looked directly at him. Anakin Skywalker had good instincts. Everyone said so. Obi-Wan, Yoda, even Palpatine. Though Anakin would later learn to distrust every word that man ever spoke, his instincts had saved him on Geonosis, on Christophsis, above Coruscant a dozen times over. So when every nerve in his body fired at once, he listened. The figure across the platform hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there, massive, armored, breathing in slow and heavy rhythms that Anakin could somehow hear even from this distance. A black helmet, a black chest plate, hands like weapons hanging at his sides. Anakin's fingers brushed the hilt of his lightsaber. Anakin. Obi-Wan's voice was calm behind him, steady as always. Don't. You feel it too, Anakin said. It wasn't a question. A short pause. Then, yes. But what Obi-Wan felt and what Anakin felt were two very different things. Obi-Wan felt danger, a disturbance, the kind of presence that made a Jedi cautious. Anakin felt something that had no clean name. It wasn't just darkness, it was familiar darkness, like hearing your own voice played back wrong, like looking at a scar you don't remember getting. He took a step forward. Anakin, I'm not going to fight him. He glanced back. I just want to see. He crossed the platform slowly, deliberately, the way you approach something that might bolt or might strike. The armored figure watched him come, didn't retreat, didn't reach for a weapon, just waited. Up close, the suit was unlike anything Anakin recognized. Republic? No. Separatist? No. Something else entirely. Something that hadn't been built yet, though Anakin didn't know that. He stopped 4 feet away and looked up into the black lenses of the helmet. The force between them pulled tight like a wire. Who are you? Anakin asked. The figure said nothing. You're not Sith. Anakin studied him. But you're not Jedi either. You're something. He trailed off, searching for the word. In between. Still nothing. Anakin tilted his head. You're not going to tell me, are you? Then the stranger spoke, low, rough, like a voice that had forgotten what warmth felt like. Not yet. 2 words, that's all. But they hit Anakin somewhere deep, somewhere below thought, below training, below everything the Jedi Order had ever taught him about staying detached. Because that voice, he didn't recognize it consciously. How could he? He had never heard himself sound like that. Broken down and rebuilt by years he hadn't lived through yet, but somewhere underneath the logic of his mind, something new, something small and quiet and terrified new. He stepped back, just 1 step, his brow pulled together, his jaw tightened. I've felt this before, he said slowly, in the dark, when I dream things I'm not supposed to dream. The armored figure went completely still, and Anakin Skywalker, brave, reckless, fearless Anakin Skywalker, felt a chill move through him that had nothing to do with the Coruscant wind. Vader didn't have time to explain himself. Not to Anakin, not to Obi-Wan, not to the Jedi Council who would have 1,000 questions and 0 acceptable answers. He had one window, one narrow closing window, and he intended to use it. He moved through the lower corridors of Coruscant fast, cutting through maintenance tunnels and back passages that he knew by memory, not from maps, from years of hunting rebels through cities exactly like this one. Every shortcut, every blind spot, every place the cameras didn't reach, He had served the Emperor long enough to know how the man thought. Palpatine never rushed. He planted, he watered, he waited. Right now, in this exact window of time, Anakin Skywalker was vulnerable. The Jedi Council had just questioned his loyalty again. Padme was worried. The war was grinding everyone down, and Palpatine would already be positioning himself as the one voice in the galaxy that truly understood the young Jedi. The first conversation is the most important one, Vader thought grimly. That's where it begins. That's always where it begins. He had to reach the Senate district before that conversation happened. He turned a corner and stopped. 2 Senate guards blocked the corridor ahead. Red robes, ceremonial, but armed. Vader straightened slowly, measured the situation in under a second. He couldn't fight his way through the Senate, not without causing exactly the kind of chaos that would alert Palpatine and give the Chancellor a reason to pull Anakin closer under the pretense of protection. He had to be smarter than that. He pulled back into the shadow of an alcove and reached into the Force with the discipline of 20 years of dark side training. Not to attack, not to intimidate, to listen. He stretched his senses outward, past the guards, past the corridor, up through 3 floors of polished Senate architecture, and there it was, that presence, smooth, patient, oily in the Force, in a way that most Jedi couldn't detect until it was far too late. Palpatine was already in his private office, already standing at his window overlooking the city, already waiting for someone. He knows something has changed, Vader realized. He felt the disturbance. He's recalibrating. That was the thing about Palpatine. You could never surprise him for long. The man had been playing this game for decades before anyone even knew there was a game. Vader's jaw tightened behind his mask. He had maybe 1 hour, perhaps less, before Palpatine sent for Anakin directly, before the first seed was placed in ground that was already soft and ready. He found a side access route, a service elevator used by Senate maintenance workers, and moved without hesitation. He was done being careful. The time for careful had passed 20 years ago, on a volcanic planet where a good man made a terrible choice. This time, someone was going to stop it, even if that someone was the very monster that choice had created. Anakin found him first, not the Council, not Obi-Wan, not the Senate Guard, or the Intelligence Division that had been quietly flagging reports of an unidentified armored figure moving through restricted corridors. Anakin Skywalker, alone, determined, and completely done waiting, found him in the lower hangar of the Jedi Temple, and he had his lightsaber drawn. "No more silence," Anakin said. His voice was steady, his eyes were not. "Tell me who you are, right now." Vader stood completely still. He had rehearsed this moment 100 times during the long walk back from the Senate district. He had built arguments, constructed careful half-truths, prepared reasonable explanations that wouldn't fracture the timeline any further than it already was. Every single one of them dissolved the moment he looked at that face. His face, young and burning and terrified underneath all that bravado. "Put the lightsaber down," Vader said quietly. "Not a chance." A long pause settled between them. The hangar hummed around them. Distant machinery, the echo of a republic at war that didn't know yet how close it was to losing everything. Vader reached up slowly and removed his helmet. The sound Anakin made was barely audible, a sharp exhale, like something had physically struck him. He stared at the face beneath the mask. Older, scarred, hollowed out by years of choices that hadn't happened yet, but unmistakably, undeniably. "No." Anakin's lightsaber hand dropped slightly. That's not possible." "It is," Vader said. "And you already knew. Some part of you knew from the first moment." Anakin's jaw tightened. "You're me. I am what you become." Vader's voice didn't flinch. "If nothing changes." The silence that followed was the heaviest thing in the room. Anakin took a step back, then stopped himself. The lightsaber came back up, but this time it trembled slightly. Not from fear of Vader, from the weight of what he was being asked to absorb. "You said, if nothing changes." His eyes narrowed. "So, you came back to change it?" "Yes. To save me. To save everyone." Vader paused. "But yes, you, Padme. The people who will die because of what you choose." Something crossed Anakin's face then, raw and complicated. Grief mixed with anger, mixed with something that hadn't fully formed yet. "You became a monster," Anakin said. Flat, not a question. Vader didn't look away. "Yes. And you're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to listen. There's a difference." Anakin studied him for a long moment. Every instinct the young Jedi had was firing at once, the Force swirling between them like a storm that couldn't decide which direction to break. Then slowly, reluctantly, the blue blade of his lightsaber pulled back and went dark. "Start talking," Anakin said. "Everything. From the beginning." Vader nodded once, and for the first time in over 20 years, he told the truth. She was exactly as he remembered, composed, intelligent, carrying the weight of a republic on shoulders that never once buckled, at least not where anyone could see. Padme Amidala sat across from Vader in a secure meeting room deep inside her senatorial residence. Two of her handmaidens stood near the door. Her personal guard, Captain Typho, had his hand near his weapon and his eyes locked on the armored stranger his senator had inexplicably agreed to meet. Vader didn't blame him. "You said this was urgent," Padme said. Her voice was measured, careful, the voice of a woman who had survived assassinations and Senate betrayals and didn't rattle easily. "And you said it involved Anakin." "It involves everyone," Vader said. "But yes, Anakin most of all." She studied him with those sharp, dark eyes, reading him the way she read every room she ever walked into. "You're not here to threaten him. No. But you know things." She leaned forward slightly. "Things you shouldn't know." Vader met her gaze directly. "Senator, there is a man in your life who you trust completely, who has stood beside you since you were Queen of Naboo, who has given you every reason to believe his concern for you is genuine." Padme went very still. "Chancellor Palpatine," she said slowly. "He is not what he appears to be." Vader kept his voice level, controlled. "Every kindness he has shown you, every private conversation, every moment he positioned himself as your ally, it was preparation. You are not his friend, Senator. You are leverage." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, "That is an extraordinary accusation." "Yes," Vader said simply. "It is. And you expect me to believe it based on what exactly?" "The word of a man whose face I cannot see, and whose name I do not know?" Vader reached into the inner compartment of his armor and placed a single data chip on the table between them. "Everything on that chip," he said, "happened in a timeline where no one warned you in time." He paused. "Communications, Senate votes manipulated, back-channel dealings with the Separatists. It is all there. Every thread leads back to him." Padme looked at the chip, didn't touch it yet. "And Anakin?" she asked. Her voice shifted slightly, just slightly. But Vader caught it. The way it always softened around that one name. His chest tightened behind the armor. "Anakin is the reason I am here," Vader said quietly. "He loves you more than he understands. And that love, in the wrong hands, becomes the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy." Something moved behind Padme's eyes. Not fear, something deeper. The particular kind of ache that comes from knowing a truth before you are fully ready to hold it. She reached out and picked up the data chip. "If what you're telling me is true," she said slowly, "then Palpatine already knows something has changed." "He does," Vader confirmed. "Which means he will move faster." She looked up. "Which means we don't have much time." Vader nodded once. "No," he said, "we don't." The invitation arrived through a Senate aide, formal, polite, completely impossible to refuse without raising every alarm in the Republic. "The Chancellor requests a private audience. Tonight. His personal office. 9th level of the Senate Rotunda." Vader read it once, set it down, and began preparing himself the way a soldier prepares before a battle he knows will cost him something. He had stood in that office before, more times than he could count, as Anakin, young and hungry for approval, as Vader, kneeling and obedient and hollowed clean of everything that once made him human. He had never walked into that room as an equal. Tonight would be different. It had to be. The office was exactly as he remembered. Curved walls, soft light that somehow made the shadows heavier rather than lighter. The wide viewport overlooking Coruscant's endless skyline. A view deliberately chosen to make every visitor feel small against the scale of what Palpatine controlled. The Chancellor stood with his back to the door. "I wondered how long it would take," Palpatine said pleasantly, as though they were old friends resuming a conversation. "Sit down." "I'll stand," Vader said, a small smile. Palpatine turned slowly. His eyes moved across Vader's armor with the quiet, methodical attention of a man cataloging a threat. "Extraordinary," he said softly. "The craftsmanship alone." He tilted his head. "But it is what is inside the armor that interests me far more." Vader said nothing. "You have been busy," Palpatine continued, folding his hands, moving toward his desk with the unhurried patience of someone who believed, genuinely believed, that time always worked in his favor. "Meeting with Senator Amidala, circling young Skywalker, disrupting pathways that took me years to carefully arrange. Years of manipulation," Vader said, "of lies dressed as wisdom, of governance." Palpatine corrected gently. "Someone must make the difficult choices, my friend. The Republic is dying. It has been dying for a generation. Skywalker is the key to saving it, but only if he is strong enough. Only if he is free from the limitations the Jedi place on him." Vader's hands tightened at his sides, because he remembered this. The exact cadence, the exact framing, the way Palpatine made darkness sound like necessity, the way he made every terrible choice feel like the only logical one. It had worked once. It would not work again. "He is not yours," Vader said, low and absolute. Palpatine studied him for a long moment. Then something shifted in those pale eyes. The pleasantness didn't disappear, but something underneath it sharpened. Ancient and cold and utterly without mercy. "No," he said quietly. "But neither are you." He paused. "Whoever you once were." The force in the room changed. Subtle. The way a temperature drops just before a storm makes landfall. Vader felt it move through the walls, through the floor, gathering behind Palpatine's stillness like a current building beneath still water. He was not here to negotiate. He never had been. Vader ignited his lightsaber. The red blade threw harsh light across the Chancellor's composed face. And Palpatine smiled. "There it is," he whispered. "There is the darkness I was looking for." Anakin reached the Chancellor's office just as the doors blew off their hinges. He ignited his lightsaber on instinct. Blue blade cutting through the smoke and debris that poured into the corridor. Inside, the room was destroyed. Furniture reduced to splinters. The great viewport cracked clean across. Scorch marks carved into the walls like something had burned its way through the entire space. Vader stood at the center of it, breathing hard, armor damaged across the left shoulder plate. His red blade still lit. Palpatine was gone. "Where is he?" Anakin demanded. "Escaped." Vader's voice was tight, controlled frustration. "He had an extraction route I didn't account for." Anakin lowered his blade slightly, but didn't extinguish it. His eyes moved across the wreckage, processing. "He'll go to the Council," Anakin said. "He'll spin this. Make you the threat. Make me complicit for not reporting you sooner." "Yes," Vader said, "he will." "So what do we do?" Vader turned to face him fully, and something in his posture shifted, a heaviness that hadn't been there before, like a man carrying a weight that had just gotten significantly larger. "Anakin!" His voice dropped. "How do you feel?" An odd question. Wrong timing. Anakin frowned. "What?" "Right now. In the Force. How does it feel to you?" Anakin paused, and for the first time since he'd sprinted through 3 corridors to get here, he actually stopped, reached inward, let himself feel the current beneath everything. His expression changed. "It's..." He searched for the word. "Unstable." "Yes. Like standing on ice that's starting to give." Anakin looked at him sharply. "That's not normal. That's not just the battle. Something is wrong with the Force itself." Vader was quiet for a moment. "Changing a timeline this significant," he said carefully, "creates fractures. Every choice I have prevented, every conversation I interrupted, every thread I pulled loose from what was supposed to happen." He paused. "The Force holds reality together, Anakin, and we have been pulling very hard on something it was not designed to bend." The silence between them was different now, heavier. "So by saving me," Anakin said slowly, "you might be breaking everything else." Vader didn't deny it. Anakin turned away, walked to the cracked viewport, looked out over Coruscant, the endless city still moving, still alive, completely unaware of how close it was to coming apart at the seams. He thought about Padme, about the children Vader had told him about, a boy and a girl he hadn't met yet, hadn't even known were coming. He thought about the moment Vader described, that terrible, irreversible moment on Mustafar. He thought about how easy it would have been, how it was apparently designed to be easy, to choose wrong. "I won't do it," Anakin said quietly. "Final. Absolute. Whatever Palpatine offers, whatever he promises, I won't choose it." Vader looked at him, and for one unguarded moment, something moved across that scarred face, something that had been buried under decades of armor and anger and grief. Relief. Pure and devastating relief. But the Force shuddered again, harder this time, like a deep structural warning, and both of them felt it simultaneously. Something was coming undone. They stood together on the roof of the Senate Rotunda, side by side. 2 generations of the same man, one in the armor of a monster he had spent a lifetime becoming, one still young enough to become anything else. Below them, Coruscant moved without knowing, without caring. The galaxy's endless machinery grinding forward, wars being fought, deals being made, lives hanging on decisions made in rooms like the one they had just destroyed. Palpatine was in the wind, exposed, but not finished. Dangerous men with nowhere left to hide were always the most dangerous version of themselves. But right now, that wasn't what was pulling at Vader. It was the Force. It had been fraying for hours, quietly at first, then louder, like a rope under tension. individual threads snapping one by one until the whole thing was held together by almost nothing. Vader could feel it happening to him specifically. His edges were becoming uncertain, the way a transmission breaks apart at long range, clear in the center, dissolving at the borders. He would reach for something in the Force and find the connection slightly delayed, slightly wrong. He knew what it meant. He had known since Chapter 1. If he was being completely honest with himself, he had simply chosen not to look at it directly. Anakin turned to him, studied his face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "It's you," Anakin said quietly. "The Force is pulling you apart." "Yes, because if I don't fall..." Anakin stopped, swallowed. "You were never created, which means you were never here, which means none of this happened," Vader finished. "Technically, that doesn't make sense." "No," Vader agreed. "It doesn't. The Force rarely does." Anakin turned back to the skyline. His jaw worked silently for a moment, processing the impossible mathematics of what was happening to the man standing next to him. "I don't want this," Anakin said, raw, honest, the way only someone very young or very certain can be. "I know. You came back. You sacrificed everything. You deserve to..." "I deserve nothing," Vader said, firm, but without bitterness. "I made my choices, Anakin. I lived inside them for 20 years. What I did to Padme, to Obi-Wan, to every person who died because of what I became." He paused. "This is not a tragedy. This is a correction." Anakin's eyes were bright. He didn't look away. "Will it hurt?" he asked. Vader considered lying, decided against it. They were past lies now. "I don't know," he said honestly. A long silence settled between them, comfortable in the way silences between people who understand each other perfectly can be. Then Vader did something he had not done in longer than he could measure. He reached out, placed one armored hand briefly on Anakin's shoulder. "Live better than I did," he said. "That's all. Just live better." Anakin placed his hand over the armor, held it there. "I will," he said. "I promise." The Force shifted one final time, and Vader smiled. The armor fades first, then the outline, then the weight of 20 years of darkness, released quietly into the Force like a breath finally let go. Anakin Skywalker stands alone on the rooftop. Padme is safe. Palpatine is exposed. The Republic has a chance, and somewhere deep in the living Force, not as a monster, not as a machine, but as the man he always should have been, Anakin Skywalker finally comes home.